Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the administration, faculty, and student body, we welcome you to the Jahangir Siddiqui Auditorium at the City Campus, IBA Karachi. We at the IBA celebrated our 60th anniversary last year in a series of events aimed at highlighting the richness of our past, our commitment to the present, and our determination to shape the future. This is the spirit with which we embrace the 61st year of our commitment to excellence, with this most distinguished event serving as a perfect example.
President and a Prime Minister of Pakistan, amongst other notable leaders in both the public and private sectors. This month of February has particular significance. We are not only hosting the President of the World Bank, but have just recently concluded a conference on politics, where numerous speakers from the administrative, political, civil, and military backgrounds attended. This month, we will also, along with the United States Ambassador, inaugurate IBA's Center for Excellence in Journalism, located in the Aman Tower. One could very well say that this February, IBA is transcending curriculum and providing a new level of exposure to its students.
Faculty now consists of the highest number of PhDs, with several members currently pursuing their doctorates abroad under the Overseas PhD scheme. Our infrastructure, which is parallel to the best in the world, arose from the IBA's alumni base being able to muster 4 billion rupees for its development. Highlights of this development in 2015 include: best in the world arose from the IBA's alumni base being able to muster 4 billion rupees for its development. Highlights of this development in 2015 include increasing the capacity of the 4 premier buildings at the main campus and city, which are Fauji Foundation Building, Mia Abdullah Library, 14-story Aman Tower Building, and the OBS Courtyard. Our student societies and clubs, of which there are 28, continue to outdo themselves every passing year, resulting in half of the city's premier academic and extracurricular events being synonymous with the IBA name. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could all please take your seats so that we can invite our eminent panelists on the stage. If you could all please take your seats so that we can begin the session. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our distinguished chief guest, the President of the World Bank, Dr. Jim Yong Kim. I request you all to please rise as we welcome him.
Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Jim Yong Kim, President of the World Bank, respected Dean and Director IBA, Dr. Ishrat Hussain, esteemed panelists, faculty members, distinguished guests, students, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the IBA Karachi, I, Taleha Aftab, along with my co-host Safi ul Haq, welcome you all to today's session, Economic Growth and Development, Opportunities for Pakistan's Youth. A conversation between Dr. Jim Yong Kim, President, the World Bank Group, and university students of Pakistan.
We will now commence with the program, and I invite Ahmed Raza Lodi on stage for recitation.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان صدق الله العظيم.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Today's discussion is titled Economic Growth and Development, Opportunities for Pakistan's Youth. In a time where we are witnessing that very connection, where our worlds are being shaped increasingly, not from above, but from within the youth of this country. Youth that we believe is empowered, educated, responsible, and has the capacity to innovate. We also believe in collaboration and how this discussion affects not just our community, but our communities. And we're extremely thankful to our friends in over 75 universities all across Pakistan who are connected to us live over our webcast. I now request the Dean and Director, IBA Karachi, Dr. Ishat Hussain, to deliver his welcome address.
Dr. Jim Yong Kim, Mr. Razak Dawood, Ms. Sadaf Abed, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me and for IBA to welcome a very distinguished guest, Dr. Kim, who is making his first trip to Pakistan. And despite his very hectic schedule, he decided to have a conversation with the students of IBA and other universities of Pakistan, and I'm extremely grateful for this particular gesture. I won't take much of time because I want him to speak to you and to interact with you. I'll just want to say that IBA, which is the oldest business school outside North America, has steered its course in 3 different directions, which might be of interest to you. The first one is that we want this institution to promote upward social mobility because income inequalities are rising all over the world, including in Pakistan, and we think higher education and professional education provides an avenue for reducing these inequalities and upward social mobility. We have a needs-blind admission policy, and we bring in talented students from the backward areas of Pakistan and the poor families and train them for 2 months at our own expense. And if they are able to clear our entrance exam, we provide complete financial assistance to them. And we think that this is one of the main ways whereby this disparity between the access to opportunities can be reduced. And I'm glad that this model is now being used by many institutions of higher learning which are in the top category. The second innovation we have is that a lot of students are risk takers. They are not really very happy in 9 to 5 jobs. And we decided that we will harness their abilities by setting up an entrepreneurship center where they are allowed to incubate their own companies and startups. And some of these companies have been quite successful. They have been acquired by others, and this training of entrepreneurship has evoked a lot of interest. And in addition to this, we have Women Lead Entrepreneurs Program, Youth Entrepreneurs Program, where we bring in the existing entrepreneurs who are engaged in their professions and try to upgrade their skills. And the third innovation is that because this is a privileged society from which most of our students come in, 70 to 80% come from the upper middle classes or the upper classes, they have not experienced the agonies and the pains of poverty. We have made it compulsory for each student before graduation to spend 6 to 8 weeks in community service in the Kachi Abadis of Karachi or the villages of Pakistan. And I think this exposure has also changed their mindset in order to serve even after the graduation, and this is a matter of great satisfaction. I would not take much time except to introduce our chief guest, Dr. Jim Yong Kim. He became the 12th president of the World Bank Group on July 1, 2012. He has an MD from Harvard Medical School and a PhD in anthropology, a very rare combination of medical training, which is quite rigorous, and a social science training in anthropology. Before he came to the bank, he was president of the Dartmouth College, and he also held professorship and chair departments at Harvard Medical School, Harvard School of Public Health, Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, and he was a director of the World Health Organization, the HIV/AIDS department, and did a marvelous job in trying to treat the 3 million new HIV/AIDS patients in developing countries with antiretroviral drugs. Dr. Kim has earned wide recognition. He was awarded a MacArthur Genius Fellowship, was named one of America's 25 best leaders by US News and World Report, and was selected as one of the Forbes magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. Thank you, Dr. Kim. Our next panelist is Mr. Razak Dawood, a colleague of mine from the early 2000s. Right now, he is working Descon, which is a multinational company, doing very sophisticated work in oil and gas sector and engineering sectors in the Middle East. Mr. Dawood is not only engaged in business, but is the leading light behind the Suleiman Dawood Business School at LUMS Karachi. He is also very much involved in philanthropic work with Vice Chairman of the Board of Governors of National Management Foundation, Member Board of Directors of Shaukat Khanum Cancer Hospital and Research Center, Trustee of CARE Foundation, and member of the Board of Directors of Namal College. My third panelist today is Sadaf Abid, whom I had the pleasure of working together when she was the CEO of Kashf Foundation and I was chairman of the board. She has done a marvelous job at Kashf, which caters to only the women entrepreneurs and women businesses. But then she opted to improve her personal qualifications. She went to Harvard Kennedy School, and then she has come back and engaged in training the women leaders and women entrepreneurs. So I welcome my panelists also, and I hope that you will have an exciting morning today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ishrat. We would at this point like to thank the International Finance Corporation and the media for their cooperation and support for our event today.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to now invite to the podium our chief guest, the President of the World Bank Group, Dr. Jim Yong Kim.
Hello, everybody. It's really it's wonderful to be here and back in a university. I spent so much of my life in lecture halls just like this, and so I think in order to get the discussion going, we're gonna have a great discussion today. I just want to tell you a little bit about my background, how I found myself in this particular job, and I hope talk a little bit about the future of Pakistan. You are, in fact, the students, the future of Pakistan, so I want to hear from you. But, you know, for me, the job of becoming president of the World Bank Group was completely unexpected. You know, I was a president at Dartmouth College, one of the Ivy League universities, and it's a job, when you take a job like that, you're there at least for a decade or so. But one day, on Monday, Timothy Geithner, who was the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, who also was a graduate of Dartmouth in 1983, he called me, and usually when someone like that calls me, it's because they have a friend who has a son or a daughter who wants to get into Dartmouth. That's what I expected. But Tim called me and said, "Hey, Jim, how would you like to be president of the World Bank?" And I said, "You mean the World Bank?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "But Tim, you know that 20 years ago, I was on the streets protesting against the World Bank. I was part of, when Dean Nusrat Hussain was there, I was part of a movement called 50 Years is Enough, which we thought that on its 50th anniversary, the World Bank and IMF should close its doors." Now, I'm very glad we didn't win that argument, but he knew that. He knew that I had had a very special role, and he said, "But you know, I want you to come down and see President Obama because, you know, he'd like to consider you for this role." So I went down to see President Obama, and I said, "Well, when do you want me to come?" I thought, you know, it might take some time. He goes, "Well, how about tomorrow?" Right? So I flew down, and I had been so enamored with President Obama, and I knew everything about him, including the fact that his mother was an anthropologist. So I walked into President Obama's office, and he said, "So Jim, you know, there are many people who are telling me that I should nominate a macroeconomist because there are many great economists at the World Bank Group, and they're saying I should nominate a macroeconomist. So what should I tell the friends like former President of Mexico, Ernesto Zedillo, macroeconomist, why I'm nominating you, a medical doctor and anthropologist?" And so I said to President Obama, I said, "Well, President Obama, have you ever read your mother's thesis?" He looked back at me and said, "Well, yeah, I have." And you see, I had ordered his mother's thesis from the only place in the world you can get them, the archives at the University of Michigan, and I had read her thesis cover to cover. This was years before this came up. And I said, "Well, you'll remember that your mother showed that in Indonesia, whereas most of the economists, frankly, were arguing that globalization would wipe out the local artisanal industry, the artists in Indonesia, she showed that actually the artisanal industry boomed because of globalization." And I said, "You know, I don't know the world from 30,000 feet, but as an anthropologist and a physician who's worked in very poor countries for most of my adult life, I'll give you the story from on the ground." And he looked at me and he said, "Okay, I get that." Later, when I was having dinner with him a couple of years later, he said, "You know, Jim, that was the best ploy to get a job I have ever seen. Read the president's mother's thesis before you meet him." So all this to say that I'm an accidental president of the World Bank Group in many, many ways. You know, every president before me was an American citizen who was either a banker or a politician. And I'm the first president that has actually done development work for most of my life. And here's the message that I want to start with. I was born in 1959 in a country that at the time was one of the poorest in the world. I've gone back and read World Bank Group documents about the Republic of Korea in the late 1950s and early 1960s, and what the document said was, this country is hopeless. It's almost all agrarian. All of the industrial capacity and the mineral wealth is in the northern part of the peninsula, there is no hope. In fact, there's so little hope that we cannot even approve them for IDA loans, the concessional loans, the loans that we provide to the poorest countries. We didn't even qualify for zero interest concessional loans back when I was born. I moved to the United States in 1964 and went through my schooling there. But under the influence of my mother, who was a philosopher, I became interested in social justice movements and remember watching Martin Luther King speeches on TV. And then when I became a medical doctor, I started working in places like Haiti, the slums of Lima, Peru. I've even worked in the prisons of Siberia, treating people with HIV and tuberculosis. But at the core of everything I did, it was a focus on poverty. The organization that I founded in 1987 along with colleagues was focused on what we called making a preferential option for the poor, focusing very specifically on how we can lift people out of poverty through providing services, health, education, livelihoods. Now, in coming into the World Bank Group, the thing that surprised me the most was how passionate all of the World Bank Group people, people like Dr. Hussain, people in the World Bank Group to fight poverty. So we went ahead and established that as our goal. We have two goals now: end extreme poverty, boost shared prosperity. Boosting shared prosperity is lifting the incomes of the bottom 40% more than the rest of the population. And it's the first time the bank has set an explicit target around inequality. So we're here to say, what we're here to do with Pakistan and with other countries is not to tell people what to do. The decisions now that are made with World Bank Group funding are part of an interaction, but at the end of the day, it's the countries that are in the lead. What we do is we provide evidence and experience. Now, you know, when I was an activist arguing against the World Bank Group, I knew a lot about health and education and social welfare in developing countries, but I knew very little about finance. When I got into the World Bank Group, I understood, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my God, how could I have neglected not learning about finance for all these years? Because without an understanding of finance, making real progress, even in health and education, is extremely difficult. So what we're here to do is to provide financing, of course, but to provide evidence from everywhere in the world about what has worked and what has not worked in lifting people out of extreme poverty and boosting shared prosperity. We are extremely careful about not being ideological. This is not an ideological institution, and I've made it very clear to everyone in the World Bank Group that the way we're moving forward is on the basis of evidence. You know, as a medical doctor in the early 1980s, the evidence-based revolution in medicine was just starting. It's hard to believe. Everyone thinks that medicine is so scientific, but so much of what we were doing was really based on what this great doctor did before. The evidence-based revolution started about 35 years ago, and it's of course progressed, but I think in development, the evidence-based revolution is just in its beginning stages. That's what we're going to do. You know, issues like bringing the private sector into state-owned enterprises, I know that's a very political issue here in Pakistan, but on that issue, we simply bring the evidence. We bring the evidence of what's happened in other places, how to do it well, how to do it, how it's been done poorly, and the equity and poverty implications of doing these kinds of things. So that is the conversation we are now having with the government, with the private sector, and that's the conversation that we'd love to have with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. I now invite to the podium our respected panelist, Mr. Razak Dawood, to share his views with the audience on the subject on hand.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? The private sector in Pakistan, I would say, has taken on a lot of our responsibilities on the social side, and it is interesting to see how in this country Uh, in this country, and Dr. Kim, I'd like to mention this, that in Pakistan, the private sector has taken on a far greater responsibility in the field of education and health than many other developing countries. Can you hear me now? No?
Check.
Well, finally, can you hear me? No? Hello? Okay. Thank you very much. So the private sector has taken on a lot of responsibilities, and the private sector has taken on a lot of responsibilities, and I'm not talking just by looking at the corporate sector. The corporate sector has done well. You've got examples like LUMS, we've got examples of GIK, Beacon House, and many others here in Karachi who have moved forward. But the other good news is that in the secondary education level, besides the various NGOs that have moved in, CARE Foundation, Trust, the Citizen Foundation, particularly in the rural area, it's very interesting to see local people coming forward with private schools, taking on their responsibilities in the under 500 rupee fee range. And many, many people in the rural areas are now shifting from government schools into these smaller private schools in the rural area. So it is a endeavor that's going on, and it is exciting because it is being led by the private sector. The area which I feel needs the maximum attention is the area of skill development in the vocational training. That is, to me, becoming the biggest challenge before our country. We have something like 28 million people who are in that age bracket, 18 on to 22, 23, and these are the ones who cannot get to university. We don't have enough universities anyway, even if they all wanted to go. But also, they will miss out if we do not concentrate on that sector in developing their skills. So this is one, and I have recently got myself, I just talk a little bit on my own experience. Besides LUMS, that was one segment. The recent experience is in higher education at Namal College. And it's interesting how in the far back, in the boondocks of Mianwali,